Here we go, back again, Shark Jockey Weekly. Me and Pace, we're back at you. We got the start of college football season. We got a few games we're going to talk about and touch on. Big weekend to kick off what I think is going to be a great season, great scheduling. And, the game everybody's been talking about is number 10, Florida State versus Georgia Tech, all the way over in Ireland. Uh, Georgia Tech was able to come back, get a game-winning field goal in the closing seconds after a tough back-and-forth battle. Pace, when you look at that game and just the start of college football season, share your perspective on that game.
I thought Florida State, man, like literally after their first drive, was just getting pushed around. They really couldn't get too much established in the run game. Excuse me, just looking at their numbers, run wise, they were 31 carries, 98 yards, 3.2 a carry, as versus Georgia Tech was 36 rushes, 190, and 5.3 per carry. And I think the difference maker for Georgia Tech was their quarterback getting in it. He had 15 carries for 54 yards, and that's the piece where you never really can account for a quarterback and his production in the run game, because he's like an extra player. Whether that's keeping plays alive, whether that's designed runs. Kid's pretty athletic. He was able to make some decent chunk plays in the run game. Nothing crazy, but just stuff to keep the sticks moving. On the flip side of that, DJU, man, he didn't give us much at the quarterback spot, man. I mean, he's per pass attempt, he's averaging 7.1, whereas the Georgia Tech's quarterback Hayes King was 9.1. DJU was 19 of 27 for 193. I mean, that's some people getting that in a quarter, man. And that was a pretty pedestrian. They didn't have any big plays in the pass game. And I just think it's a space where, don't get me wrong, it's an early game season, or early game in the season, excuse me. And I don't think their season is ruined. With the expansion of the playoffs, they still got a chance. It just, it was almost sleepwalking out there. You could almost tell like Georgia Tech wanted it. They believed in whatever their message was coming in camp, executed that in camp, and they played like they were number 10 team in the nation. They played with a lot of enthusiasm, and you could tell almost like Georgia Tech made plays, and they kept their enthusiasm and belief kept growing, and Florida State didn't make enough plays, and their enthusiasm kept going down. And I'll say this, man, and I'm sorry for interrupting. The DJU, man, I kind of root for the kid. He seems like a good kid. Hearing him talk, hearing the story, even going back to Clemson. And I feel like there's players like that where you hear them talk, it kind of get into their background, you kind of root for them, and whatever, just in life in general. But I don't know, man. It's like it's tough for him to process things. It's like it's so slow. It's so slow for him to get the ball out of his hand. Even getting out of the pocket, it's almost like it's a step too slow in everything he does decision wise. And at that place, man, we've talked about it before, man. Quarterback play is everything. You gotta find a way to get something out of that position. And I ain't talking about 500 yards a game. I'm just saying whether it's an explosive play down the field, whether it's you know, going and getting the first down with your legs, something. And I just don't think he galvanized his team, whereas I think Georgia Tech's quarterback did. I think he started off in the space, kind of fielding his way a little bit, got some rhythm, some momentum, and I think they just rode him to a win.
Pace, man, I agree with you on a lot of that, man. Speaking of quarterback play, I mean, DJ has been in essentially three different programs. Started at Florida State, went to Oklahoma State. Now he's back there again. And when you're talking about essentially in a way, three different places, he hadn't gotten comfortable. And again, I'm starting to call Florida State transfer U. I mean, they brought in a lot of guys that were trying to fill some holes left by, some guys on fighting for NFL rosters now. And you just can't plug and play an NFL caliber talent. That's just not as easy as, okay, well, we'll get this guy to the portal and they're going to be at that same level. And so, again, when you talked about Georgia Tech's quarterback, I mean, when you DJ, you 19 or 27, and you look on the flip side, King, quarterback for Georgia Tech, was 11 for 16. And I think that we're going to see those two guys grow, I hope, throughout the season as they get more comfortable with the offense. But I didn't see a lot of downfield passes. I didn't see a lot of deep balls. I didn't see a lot of stretching the defense. They were kind of relying on that short to medium pass, and it could be that it's just early in the season. But when you have to travel almost around the world to play your first game, that's a lot to put on your team to do coming just really out of training camp. And, there's a saying, man, and I think you mentioned this. When it comes to college football, you don't know what you have until that first game.
That's exactly right.
And spring ball is cool, training camp is cool, but you don't know what you have against other competition. And I think Georgia Tech kind of had a chip on their shoulder. I like the fact that even after Florida State came down, got the touchdown, a 2-point conversion, they came right back with it. And you and I know as defensive players, man, it's really hard to get over somebody running the ball down your throat. But I think Georgia Tech just mentally was in a more comfortable space than Florida State. Again, you had a ton of transfers. When I was watching the game, I kept hearing the announcers refer to this player last year was somewhere else. This player last year was somewhere else. And when you're talking about bringing a player on your team, it's not just as easy as, okay, go ahead and play. You got to get used to the vernacular. You got to get used to the timing, the way the game flows for a certain team, the packages, and the way that coach wants you to read certain things. And you got to get used to it at a high level. And so it was still a fun game, an exciting game to watch. I always like, seeing that underdog fight. I also think it showed that the ACC, sometimes when a conference is wide open, it can kind of make you wonder if it's a good conference. But I think the ACC is just as competitive as it has ever been this year from what I've seen. So because everybody was just going ahead crowning either Florida State or Miami, but you've got to prove it, man. And so I think it was a good game. We're going to talk about it later, just, the impact that it's going to have internationally playing that game there. A great game, packed out crowd in Ireland and what that can mean for college sports internationally, for football particularly. So it was a great game to watch. But you're right, man. When I look at that quarterback play, one quarterback seemed comfortable with what he was doing, running the ball. The other quarterback just wasn't quite sure. Now, DJ made some good throws in that second half, but again, you didn't see, with Florida State, you kind of expect to have one or two deep threats to stretch that defense out. But Georgia Tech was able to crowd that line of scrimmage, and then that's lights out part is over when you're able to do that, man. And so, Pace, man, there were two other games that were, other exciting games that kind of had that mixture of what we were talking about with the underdogs and programs kind of going in different directions. You and I were talking about the SMU Nevada game. What was your takeaway from that?
Team that knows how to win, has been winning the last 3 to 5 years, and that's SMU, have been really building a program, and I think they're in a good space to be able to move into the ACC. Then you have another program in Nevada who's been struggling. They haven't won a game since October 28th of last year. Up big, Nevada was up 24-13 going into the fourth quarter. Gave up 16 unanswered points to lose literally in the last seconds of the game. Tight end caught a fade route. You did everything wrong. I mean, from bad penalties, they couldn't really get the offense started. But when you've won and you know what you're doing wrong, and it could be anything. Sometimes it's first game jitter. Sometimes you got a newer group of guys who kind of got to get acclimated. Sometimes it's just tough going on the road. You're talking about going from Dallas to Reno, Nevada. I mean, people had jackets on, so it was a little chilly. They had some altitude, and it's a lot of different things that affect people. But they found a way to win. And I just think it's just one team, again, knows how to win, and one team's just in this rut where if they play it right, that loss can galvanize them. All isn't lost for Nevada. You just, hey, we got to learn how to finish games. We see we can score. We see they play great defense. They held SMU. They went toe-to-toe with them at Nevada's defense versus SMU's offense. It's just about closing the game. And I think we both can speak to this. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, to close the game out. Because the plays and the play calling kind of speak to, hey, let's grind this on out. We're not going to air it out anymore. We're going to take the air out of the ball. We're going to run the ball. Well, the other team knows that too, so they're gonna crowd the line of scrimmage. And sometimes, before you know it, sometimes the game plan can switch the momentum. You done slowed yourself down with this team. Like, hey man, we only got 8 minutes left. We got to go. And so, again, it's a learning experience, and hopefully, in their locker room, in their building. When I speak of they, I'm talking about Nevada. Hopefully, they don't harp too much on the loss itself and saying like, to me, good coaching is saying, look, man, we right there. We can play with these kids, these boys. Now it's about finishing. Now it's about, you know, sometimes when you lose, you kind of expecting bad things to happen. Whereas when you winning, you like somebody gonna make a play. I know somebody
Yeah,
gonna make a play. And that
yeah,
literally we've been through that. We've been through that at Wake. You play good games all the way to the end against a good team, and it's almost like you sabotage yourself because you're kind of looking over your shoulder like, man, something bad about to happen. And so again, I think in that space, man, one, it was a good game, and it was a good early match for both teams. Good for college football in general, because what coaches are gonna do, I guarantee you, coaches around the country are gonna show highlights, or they're gonna speak to the game and talk about both sides and talk about, look, this is what week one could possibly look like for us. And that might be Georgia versus Clemson. Georgia's number one. Everybody expecting them to roll over. Clemson might come out with a game plan that's the best thing Dabo ever called. And next thing you
yeah,
know, Georgia down 21-3. Hey, man, we got to find a way. We got to inch back into this game, stick to the script, that type of thing. Then again, you and I both know, man, you can be down big and it could just get out of hand, or you can get down big and kind of get back in the rhythm. Everybody kind of look themselves in the face in the mirror and say, all right, man, just do your job. Let's stick to the game plan. Let's get back on track. But
yeah,
even we talked about this New Mexico versus Montana, same situation. Does well at their level. I think they just moved up, and New Mexico's been down for the past few years. New Mexico was up 31-14 going into the fourth quarter, and Montana State scored 21 unanswered in the fourth. Literally the same game. You know, One team in New Mexico looked like they were flying high. They got a new coach in Bronco Mendenhall who was at UVA a couple years ago. It was hitting on all cylinders, scored 2 defensive touchdowns. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a rout. Montana State found a way. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And
And,
it's just,
and
go ahead.
man, when you play the game like that, the best asset you can have is a staff that knows how to make halftime adjustments. And they may not hit those things early on in the game. They may not, call that play where they identify, are your corners using poor technique? Is that safety coming up too close? Is that offensive line giving away the play with their splits and things like that? But those halftime adjustments, man, that's important for a staff to be able to put together a game plan for the second half, because you can have your idea when you're going through that week of preparation and even going into the game, but it's just little things, man, that little nuances, that formations and things like that, a team can really pick up on and start to exploit that second half. And there's a saying, man, momentum is undefeated
Yeah.
when it comes to it. And all it takes a couple of plays, and you talked about it, man, when players believe, that could be a game changer. That's what makes college football special. Not to say that it doesn't happen at the pro level, but, man, when you see it in college football and you see young people able to keep their heads in the game, and oftentimes that's the difference maker, man. And so for all 3 games, man, this weekend, it was great to see so much happen that first week, and you could tell a lot about your team moving forward. Like you said, some teams are going to have to adjust and send the message that, hey, this is just the beginning. It's a long season, and it really is. And then some teams, you're going to have to say, okay, guys, we got this one. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We still got a battle down the road. And that's a lot easier conversation and message to have with your team. But I think, again, if your coaches are good at, keeping the players resilient and looking forward to the next game, man, I'm looking forward to a hell of a season this year, man. And I want to give a shout out, man. I know I kind of got on them last show, but, Delaware State did make it out to Hawaii. It was a 35-14 loss for them, but they still made it out there, kept their heads high, played hard. So I want to give a shout out to Delaware State, not letting that mishap just totally take them take them out of the way. So I want to give shouts out to them, man, real quick.
Yeah, no, they I followed the game. It wasn't on TV where I'm at. I followed it online. I mean, from Delaware all the way to Hawaii in itself is a supreme challenge. And believe me, that humidity on that big island ain't nothing to what you seeing
Yeah.
in Delaware.
Yeah.
Nothing. So with that being said, man, you're always in football, man. You always have to have the mentality. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Whether that's
Yeah.
somebody telling you that or you just realizing, like, look, man, I don't care if it's the number they didn't gave you. They didn't give you some trash shoulder pads. Your helmet ain't the one
Hmm.
you want. You got to find a way.
Yeah.
And sometimes that doesn't lead itself to a win. But sometimes, man, you look back at these moments at the end of the season, and it adds character to your team. It adds character from the standpoint of, man, look, man, we had to go out to Delaware on some crazy circumstances, and we got through that. All right,
Yeah.
you might be down 14 at half to another team. Like, look, if we got through that, this ain't nothing. These 14 points, you could use it to galvanize your team. But I want to make a
Exactly.
point, man, on DJ in Florida State, man. Criminal sometimes when I see the kid, how coaches. Well, let me start with this first. I think for him to be successful, he needs a great running game behind him. And the reason why I say that is I think a great running game opens up play action for quarterbacks. It makes the vision to read coverages a little bit clearer because now teams have to respect the run. Now safety's got to check that run. So now you can
Yeah.
see that a little bit clearer. Excuse me. Not everybody can read coverages. Even guys in the pros can. They just sometimes aren't great. Sometimes they got great play callers behind them to open it up for them. And then the other point I want to make is I think their coach just needs to do a better job of just kind of getting him in rhythm to start the game. Some easy throws, some stuff that's just clear for him that he can make a quick decision, kind of keep him going. Again, some quarterbacks, man, you can hand them the ball and say, all right, cool, you're going to throw the ball 40 times a game, and they're going to let it rip every time. And
Yeah.
some people just can't process it quick enough for whatever reason, whether it's some past coaching, whether it's some things they've done in the past mistake-wise to where they're hesitant. But they got to find a way to just get him in better rhythms to start the game. Because I think whenever he starts and he's unsure or he's not got that play to give him confidence, I think it looks like how they looked against Georgia Tech. But again, if whether you putting him in the run game or you just got a good running game behind him, I think that's gonna have to be key. And like you talked about, man, they don't. I don't think they have a guy on the outside. I mean, you lost Keon Coleman to the draft last year, and we know Florida State. They always have had a guy.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
had more than one guy, but they always had a minimum of one guy. And
Yep.
so when you don't have that, and I think we saw Georgia Tech figured out, oh, they ain't got a guy. So Georgia Tech started playing it like, okay, we're gonna knock this run game out and let our guys handle it, and they did easily, pretty much. I mean, Florida State didn't really. I don't think they put any pressure on Georgia Tech in the secondary at all, outside of maybe that first drive, and that I just give that first game jitters. Sometimes coaches got to get in their rhythm too. Like
Yeah.
they got this playbook, this play sheet that's this big, and sometimes the good ones figure out, hey man, we don't need all that. These 5 plays been working till they stop it. We gonna run these. That's what a good coach gonna do. We don't need all that. I mean, again, man, when you've played, you kind of see a lot that can be learned from the first game because sometimes when you go out there and blow a team out, man, you don't really have a lot to take from that. I mean, you beat a team in the
Hmm.
first quarter, first 8 minutes of the game. You don't have a lot of good tape to really go back and teach from. Um, so I think all 3 of those teams, even Delaware State and Hawaii, 4 games, 8 teams. I think they got good tape, man. Again, is Hawaii gonna win the national championship? Probably not. You know what I mean? But again, you could use this first game to kind of build this season. Take a lot of good tape from good, bad, indifferent, however you want to look at it. I think the good coaches and the teams who make the most out of their season will use this first game. Even this week coming up, there'll be a lot of good football, good things, good and bad, to take away from it. The way you get the most out of the season, again, be honest about it, grow from it, Hey, we can do this well. We don't do this well. Hey, we need to expand our playbook. Hey, we need to decrease our playbook. All those type of things. So I just wanted to say that, man. But again, man, it was good football, man. I can't complain at all.
Yeah, it really was. I enjoyed it, man, and I'm looking forward to this weekend. And we're gonna jump into later on this week. We're gonna talk about some of these matchups coming up, man. I've already got my time set up, man. I'm gonna go get all my snacks. I don't really plan to move, but to go to use the bathroom, and that's about it, man. Speaking of that, real quick, I'm gonna toss something out. What is your favorite kind of snack to eat when you know you about to sit through a few games? What does Calvin Pace like to have with it?
Good question, man. Honestly, when I'm watching games, I might just snack. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
could be anything from. Typically, it's a Saturday, so I'm like, man, whatever. I'm about to eat whatever. I mean, that could be a donut. That can be some pistachios. I mean, like you said, I don't plan on going far, so I might give me a couple things. Just have them sitting right there, and and then if it's a typically what I'll do is if it's a lull game. What I mean lull game is, let's just say Purdue versus Penn State. You know what I'm saying? I'm paying attention, but I might start grilling a little bit then to have my food ready for the prime time night games. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and the thing is, I like those games. Sometimes the best games to watch are the games you kind of checking in and out. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes when
Hmm.
you have to watch it all the way through, you might fall asleep or just not end up paying attention. But you kind of checking in and out. Then you look up somebody get bombed on or somebody make a hell of an interception or something. But typically, that's what I do, man. Like early in the morning, the earlier games, I might just snack a little bit, and then in the
Yeah.
middle of the day, I'm prepping food, and then at nighttime, that's when I'm just locked in. Whether I'm cooking or I didn't got takeout, that's when I'm locked in on food choices.
Man, I'm locked in on some nachos and wings. That's it. You give me some nachos, some wings, a little bit of some rum and some juice, and then I got my water bottle. I'm good. You ain't gotta come give me nothing else. I'm good. I like to go get it. Sometimes, man, one time I put my order in a couple of days in advance at the restaurant, so I can go pick it up and come back, and I got my nice little setup. Everything's where I want it, man, and I got my games locked in, and I'm ready to go. But when I was watching the game, man, I saw a couple of things new to college football, and I'm glad. I don't know why it took this long, but I'm glad they put it in. Was the 2 minute timeout. So for the fans out there that may have seen it, may not. So now in college sports, in college football, there's a timeout for just like in the NFL prior to the half and the last 2 minutes of the game. And I saw Georgia Tech use that to their advantage down the stretch. You get that extra time out. You can settle your team down. And I really think you definitely need that when you're talking about college. You're talking about young players. Their minds can go a lot of different places. That could be a time for a coach to throw that game plan in, calm a team down, or get them hyped up to finish out that half or to finish the game strong. And I'm glad they finally started putting that in. And I think it's going to have a positive impact on the game. Some people are like, well, it's going to slow the game down. It's a freaking timeout.
No, man, they need
They're
them
not
kids.
talking about adding a whole nother quarter. It's a freaking timeout. And, again, I think you just need it at that college football level.
I say this, man, and I think people need to start understanding, man. These kids are just better. These kids are better than we were when we was playing in
Yeah.
college. They're more prepared for college, coming into college. Their high school schemes speak more to the college game and being more ready. Yeah, man, I ain't gonna tell it. Man, I think my high school calls was just 3 words. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, you get into the college game, you got a call, you got checks off of that, you got a different things. Just the verbiage alone it just sounds different. And so, man, you watch some of these high school kids and they're running five wides in high school. You know what I'm saying? You see them in these 7-on-7s. So I think the timeout is necessary, and I think it actually helps the game because a 2 minute situation, whether it's before half or at the end of the game, is so big. You don't want to have to put a kid out there where you're speeding them up, and the coach isn't able to call the best play. And I'm talking about on both sides. Give them a timeout. You know what I'm saying? Let the defense be at their best. Let the offense be at their best. I think that
Yep.
makes for a way better 2 minute drill at the end of the game to where now you kind of probably are getting the best teams and the best scenarios to see what they're really about. You know, when you
Yeah,
matching a good quarterback against a good defense, let's just say you got Texas, Georgia, and it comes down to a 2 minute drill, minute 45 for, potentially a playoff spot, man. Yeah, give them a timeout. They need that. Then it
yeah,
should have been in the game, in general. I'll give you another one that needs to be in the game, my personal opinion, is the tag down rule. I think if in college if you catch a ball and you go down, I think you should be able to get up and run. Let's just be real, man. The majority of these kids want to play in pro football on some level, whether it's Canada, whether it's the UFL. Prep them, get them ready. They're gonna be doing this anyway in another 3 4 years. So I think they can handle it. I mean, you basically telling them now to be able to run full speed and size the guy up and hit him properly. I think they can pretty much understand a guy isn't tagged down until you tag him down. And I think that
yeah,
just adds to the game. And again, these kids are better athletes than we were. So I think let them use their athleticism. You know what I'm saying? Let's see if a guy can make a tackle in space. Let's see if a guy can get up off the ground and go 80. I
yeah,
think it needs to be added. Just because if nothing else, again, it marries up to what the NFL is doing, and that's where a lot of those kids essentially want to be. I hope they don't
yeah,
change the kickoff rule though. I hope they don't go that far. I'm sorry, man. I
yeah,
enjoy the kickoff, man. I think
yeah.
again.
Because you ain't never had to run down and bust that wedge.
Oh, I have. Oh, I have, man. I have. But I mean, you think, man, we've got guys in the Hall of Fame for just returning kicks, man,
Yeah,
and they
which
added
was
a lot to the
deserved,
game.
which
They
was
added,
deserved,
yeah,
which was well deserved.
they added a lot to the game. And I
Yeah,
played with good punt returners and kickoff returners, and we used to stand up and we'd be watching them, man. I want to see them get busy. I want to see them go
yeah.
take 100. You know what I'm saying? So I hope college doesn't go that far. But some of the other small rule changes, tagging guys down, like you just spoke about the 2 minute timeout. I think it's necessary, man. I mean, it's like why not?
Yeah, they added another piece too, man. That they got from the NFL is that coaches can now communicate through the headset, and so the coaches, I think it's the quarterback, and I think one player on defense. You have the earpiece in your helmet, and you can communicate with your coach up until the 15-second mark on the play clock. And I think that's going to create more of a chess match. I think it's going to make players smarter and faster because you're going to have to get used to hearing that coach in your ear while you're still communicating with the team. But to be able to have that coach at that last minute as a quarterback, tell you about that safety, tell you about that coverage you might see, or to be able to communicate with that linebacker or that safety or whatever, look at this split, look at this formation. I think ultimately you're going to have better football because you're going to have more players getting more information. And the more information that you can get to a player and they can communicate with the team, again, it shuts off at 15 seconds. And now, while you have the hurry-up offense in terms of guys getting to the line, you're still taking your time because you got to see what the defense is doing, see what the offense is doing. So you're seeing more and more teams run that play clock down before they run a play because it's becoming more and more of a chess match on that college level. So I'm excited to see it, man, continue with some other games and to see if those things start to impact how teams really play those last 2 minutes, how the quarterbacks and defenses begin to adjust. And while it's not exactly the same as the pro game, but it is. And I think it's time that, they put those things in place. I just wish it didn't take so long to have those things in place. But, change isn't always quick. But I think definitely played a role in the games that we talked about, those 3 games, because, they came down to the wire. And so I think that this year the playoff committee is going to have some hard choices to make, man, this year. And it's going to be some really good football continuing. I think Florida State's going to bounce back. I hope they do. Just, they came in ranked number 10. And that goes to something else, man, just kind of another subject, man. I'm really one of those that in college football, I don't really like the preseason rankings. I get why they do it. But again, because you don't have preseason games, you don't, and you're only going off of a recruiting class, transfer portal, and spring ball. That's it. And so you're trying to judge from that where a team is going to come in ranked. And so I think if you come in ranked high, it gives you a shot to sustain that throughout the year, at least stay in the top 25. But if you're outside that top 25, you got to work so much harder just to crack that. I think they can keep the rankings. But my thought is, let's wait to week 3. Let everybody play. You done got a nice little early body of work. We've seen what's what, because oftentimes, you may have a true freshman that come from out of nowhere and is a game changer. You have your quarterback maybe is not producing like you thought. And so, like Georgia Tech, they look like they should have been in the top 25. This should have been, it looked like maybe a number 10 versus number 15 type matchup. So to me, because I think I hit you during the game right afterwards, I think, and asked, is Florida State overrated or Georgia Tech underrated? Or, you start having those discussions. And maybe that's the point of it, man. You create these discussions around college football just to, get people energized. And I get it, but, those early rankings, man, can sometimes not work out well for a team, and your team mentally starts to question themselves, because I'm pretty sure those cats on that plane on the way back from Ireland for Florida State starting to think, are we really number 10? Somebody on that team is thinking that. While those guys at Georgia Tech are starting to think, what, we just knocked off the number 10 team in the country. Right. You know what? It's on from here. We're going to get ready to roll it up and then have that. So I could see it working both ways, but I'd like to see a real hardcore ranking around week 3, especially with the way some of these schedules are set up, these tough matchups, and so on and so forth. So, that's just my take on it, man. I think that, they can keep rankings, but don't come out with the hardcore rankings until after week 3.
I think they should do something instead of being so specific. Number 1 through 25. I think that's ridiculous to be able to rank it. Like, only team that should start out number 1 is whoever won the national championship. Granted, they haven't lost half their team to graduation or transfer portal. You should start off number 1 in theory. But I think after that, they should just put them in tiers. Don't even label tier A, B, C. Because the fact of the matter is like you spoke to this, how can I rank somebody 10th in the nation when a quarter, third, maybe even half your starters are brand new? They don't even know how to get around Tallahassee. And I'm being, a little facetious here, but just being real, you spoke to it. Part of the thing that makes being able to win or to turn your team into a winner is to know your team. You know what I'm saying? Like, I stayed at a school 4.5 years. I knew everybody. I knew the equipment people. I knew the people in the cafeteria. It was comfortable. You know what I'm saying? So, I knew when things got bad or we having a bad game or I was having a bad game, I knew I could count on Rod Steven. I knew I could count on Eric King.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When things are going rough and you're new, you looking out there like, I don't even know his name for real. I just call him Bubba. I don't even know his real government name. You know what I'm saying? And it's a small thing, but it's real though.
You're right.
I believe this. And I won't ever stop believing this. I think close teams are good teams. When you close with your team, your teammates, your coaching staff, everything's in sync, it's easy. It's easier. When it's a rift or guys are fractured or guys are new, now you got to get people on the same page. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes as a player, we don't even necessarily have to talk. We can see the same thing, make eye contact, cool. I see you see it. You know what I'm saying? Versus I'm looking at you, you ain't even looking at me. You know what I'm saying? You looking somewhere else. You still stuck on the last play. Or you asking me about a call or something. Or hey man, what we do on this play? Like, I mean, it's a small thing, but man, the margin for error, unless you're just grossly better than a team, if you're Georgia playing Catawba, Elon, man, you ain't tripping on nothing. You know what I'm saying? You can get down to your threes and you still gonna have a pretty decisive win. But
Yeah.
it's tough, man. Small things turn into big things. You know what I'm saying? And something as simple as communication. I'm telling you, and you know this, not being able to communicate or not communicating at all can make all the difference in the world. And it's tough to communicate with people that you aren't familiar with. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think to your point about the rankings, I think it would be better served as tier based maybe until, like you said, week 3 to where we can give the world an accurate response into who's 1 and who's 25. You know what I'm saying? Because again, you know, I thought it was going to be a better game than people led on to be just because Georgia Tech has played Florida State well throughout the year. That's a point people don't understand either. In every conference, from the SEC to the lowest level that is played football, the teams that just got your number. There's
Yeah.
teams you just can't beat. There's coaches that just, hey, I know, man, I might lose every game on the schedule, but I know I can beat Smitty. I know what he like to come out. I know his formation. They're just for real, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like us, man. Like, you know, for whatever reasons, we played teams well, and there's certain teams, like we couldn't ever beat Clemson. We still can't beat Clemson. I
Yeah.
don't know why. You know, we can get all the way to the finish line, but for whatever reason, we just can't beat Clemson. You know,
Yeah.
and there's other teams like we play well against, no matter where we playing at. We're playing well against them. So, you know, it's a lot of different storylines and things that go on in football. But I do think, like you were saying, change isn't always quick. But you know, I think they could necessarily go away with the rankings. Even if you didn't do week 3 after week 1, let everybody play.
Yeah.
Let's
Something.
let everybody
Something, something other than mid July or early, late June, you done figured out who the top 25 is because you done went to spring practice and looked at who they recruited. Like, come on now, give me something with some substance. Hey, Pace, hold 1 second. Don't go nowhere. I'm getting ready to switch over to a better connection. Give me 1 second. We get disconnected. You could probably use that same link. Hold 1 second. We get this going. You still there?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you now. So. Yeah, man, it's one of those things where, you know, it's so – and that's the joy of college football, man. But you brought up something about knowing the team, man. True story, man. I don't know. Do you remember Sarge?
Yeah.
Our equipment guy? Man, let me tell you. So they got me. Freshman year, I was traveling. You know, most of us were all red-shirted except for Dez and DeLon. And so I got the call to travel with the team up to Navy, right? So I never traveled with the team like that. So some of the upperclassmen, I'm not gonna call their names, Gardell Chavis, and he said, "Yeah, man, go to Sarge, and he got your plane ticket." I didn't know no better, so I rolled up to Sarge, and rest in peace to Sarge. I said, "Sarge, I need my plane ticket." Sarge looked at me. He said, "If you don't get the hell out of my face with that bullshit, who told you that? Who sent you up here?" Man, Sarge laid my ass out because I went up to him asking where was my damn plane ticket. But again, it's stuff like that, man, that when you don't know, when you knew, you got to go back, you got to learn all of that stuff. And you're not a professional at that point. So you still trying to figure out, and stuff like that can have an impact on your mental psyche going into it. And you know, I know transfer portal is what it is, but you're right, man. When you can form that good camaraderie, and everybody doesn't have to like each other to the point where everybody's just boys off the field, but I think that there's a deep level of respect and just knowing a person. But you only get that from having those reps together. And that goes back to a point I made a few weeks ago, man. That's why I think having at least one preseason game type environment where you're against another team, then you can see what you got. But when you banging on each other and you're not taking players to the ground, you know, things are kind of slowed down. You out there doing third or 7-on-7 against the same ones. I think it'll help sometimes to be able to bring somebody in, another team in, see how they play, to get the game speed down and your timing. But I can only imagine how they felt, you know, coming off that long flight, even though I think they got there a couple of days early to get adjusted to it. You got classes starting. All those things can play with a player's psyche. But from here on out, man, do you see college football playing other places for early in the season games?
Yes, I think. I mean, there are football convertible stadiums across the world. I mean, and just in the pros, I played in Toronto, Mexico, London, and other place I can't think off the top of my head. But it's money. Like even going to Mexico City and playing Smitty, man, you would have thought we played in Mexico City in a stadium that held 106,000 people, and it was they only could convert it to like 100,000. Mind you, we was trash playing against a trash San Francisco 49ers team, and it was packed. I'm talking about to the brim. And every jersey that you could think of was represented in the NFL. I mean, and I don't mean this any kind of way. I just wouldn't have thought, Mexicans in Mexico City watch football like that. Nothing in my
Yeah,
life would have told me that. Same thing with London. I never would have thought people cared about football like that. I know they see it. I know that they watch it. But I just assumed soccer was just the sport, and we'll watch it when it's on type of thing. So it's no different in college ball. I mean, we've seen the Saudis come in and do stuff with Live Golf. I think it's only a matter of time before they get a game over there. Hopefully, there's no political stuff and just stuff outside of football that might not necessarily make the game be available. But even this year, the Eagles played Green Bay in Brazil. Who would have thought? Like what? What's the connection? But again, it's a top level sport with the best athletes. People watch it across the world. So I think you'll continue to see this. I mean, we played in Hawaii. I mean, it's still in the United States, but it was an experience that took us a long way away in a place that looked foreign to us that we didn't know anything about. So anytime money is involved in football, it will be considered. And the more money is involved, the greater chance of it actually happening. It is what it is. It's the ultimate the ultimate form of capitalism. If it's available and it can make some money, it will be considered. Trust me.
yeah. And
And
see, I like it. I like it because the players and the staff get that experience of not just the game, but if the school, the university can organize it, your players get to see something different, and they may go to a place that the average person may not ever get to go to, and you take that whole experience with you. Typically, there's a local group. They will have events planned for you. You get exposed to the culture there. You get to engage with some of the fans in at certain events, and you get exposed, and that broadens your thinking, that broadens your horizon, and that's an experience, man, for someone at that young age that can impact their thinking, and I think it's great, man. I still have those memories from going to the Aloha Bowl and playing, and what it was like to practice in that weather, and then you find out that you get to see how their facilities are, because we practiced at one of the high schools, and I heard some of the guys saying, my high school was better than this, and so on and so forth. But you still get that experience, man. My kids ask me about that, man. They enjoy hearing me talk about that experience.
But that's why I was really, really hoping that Delaware State was able to get their way to Hawaii.
Yeah,
Because even with us going in 99, 2000,
yeah,
I'm not sure everybody on our team was ever to make it back to Hawaii and whatever walks of
yeah,
life that they made it in. And like you spoke to, a lot of times when you think about it, we look at money as the overall, say so, well being, whatever. But a lot of times, man, it's the experience. Like you just spoke to, man. But I still got my Aloha Bowl shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
and again, I guarantee you, everybody on our team, all the staff will remember that and remember just different moments. The game, we had an amazing game. So that's why I was hoping. I was like, man, I hope everything works out for those kids, man. Where win, lose, or draw, I know they probably missed a day in whatever they had planned, but just to be able to get that love out there, because I remember getting off the plane, they had the lays for us. I
yeah,
remember going to the shows at the showing the cultural side, the dance and the food. I remember
Yeah.
all of that, man, and it felt okay. We thank you, and that we're happy for you guys being here. This show us, we're showing you, hey, this is our culture. This is our history and certain things. So I'm just glad they got a chance to get that experience because again, everybody's not ever able to make it to Hawaii. That's that's not a budget friendly trip. You know what I mean? It's not an
Exactly.
easy trip to make. I mean, at the very least, if you live in Miami, technically you can drive to LA. You can't drive to Hawaii. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And
again, that's the beauty of sports in general, to be able to just take people to places that sometimes they never heard of, sometimes they never thought of or been exposed to, and be able to see different things. I remember going to Mexico City, London, Toronto to play, and I just never would have thought people would be cheering for me from them places. They had no, not to say they were cheering for me in specific, but it felt like it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So again, I think to your point, man, I think if college football plays it right, I think they will keep growing that. And then it makes sense. Like it makes sense for Notre Dame to play a game in Ireland. Fighting Irish. So I think logistically speaking, that makes sense. I think that I think it's a great thing. I do. I really do. I think
Yeah.
if teams are smart, it's all about brand visibility. What better way to put your brand on the world scene? We're not talking about national. We're talking about globally. Put your brand out there the way they can see it. You know,
Yeah.
and if every time you
Yeah.
see basketball players, particularly Kobe, God rest his soul, Steph, anytime them guys go to China and Japan, man, they get way more love there than they get here. And them people know everything about those players. So,
Yeah.
hey, man, why not start getting these kids that exposure early, man? And even outside of sports, man, you might have an engineer goes to another country and able to pick up some things and find out they got a program some places. I think you can just add more to these guys' lives, guys and females. I think the females should be included too in their sports to be able to go overseas and play. Um,
Yeah.
that can grow them as people. You know what I'm saying? Outside of the sport, grow them as people.
Even a different environment, man. Even a different environment. I remember playing at the Air Force Academy, and you up in Colorado, the altitude, and I remember getting off the plane and being in the hotel that night and barely being able to breathe. And during the game, we sucking wind just from the altitude and the atmosphere. And at the moment, it's not a good feeling, but later, that becomes a story you can tell. And I think that's where college and the NFL is a little bit different. Is the pageantry around it, the history around it, and it's at every university has their own unique and special story. And me being a history buff, man, I get into a lot of those things about these unique places, and a lot of people forget, the Heisman, that trophy. I think Heisman coached at Georgia Tech.
Yep.
So it's those stories like that, man, by coaches, players, universities, and the things that were little at the time played a major role in what the game is today. And maybe we should do that, man. Make it a segment where we spend a minute or two just talking about the history of different stadiums, different players, different things that have happened. Wake has had their opportunity to put a stamp on history with a lot of things that they've done. We've been a part of historical moments with Coach Caldwell and being a part of his legacy and what he's done. So maybe that's something we'll jump into, man.
Yeah. No, it's out there, man, and it's even. I think a lot of times, even fans, even alumni, don't necessarily know how and why certain things come about and how certain teams get to where they are. It's like I talk to people here, and I'm like, everybody's in the present. Everybody just thinks about today or last year. So even if you look at Georgia and Georgia Tech, for probably the early 90s until 2001, Atlanta or Georgia in general was ruled by Georgia Tech. There wasn't many people. I mean, don't get me wrong, you had
Yeah.
a Georgia fan base, but in terms of winning and being able to be ranked highly, playing in the biggest games, Georgia Tech was a team, and we
Yeah.
we lived it with Joe Hamilton. Do you
Yeah.
ever remember them talking about Georgia while we was in college. Same thing in
Yeah,
Alabama.
you're right.
You have to remind people like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Florida State was Alabama from 1989 until Bobby Bowden retired. Couple years before he retired, when things started kind of slipping a little bit, Florida State was a team, and we lived that. We saw that live.
Unfortunately,
We saw some of the biggest human beings, biggest, fastest, all that. And so I
yeah,
think sometimes. Whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's just history in general, people forget a lot of points that sometimes is on purpose. People want to live in this moment like, oh man, Clemson, man, we've been doing it forever. No, 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 don't
no,
do that.
no,
Don't do
no.
that. 1980, when y'all, that 1 year in 80, 81, but after that, man, y'all was middle of the road, and don't get me wrong, you definitely had your moments in the last 10, 15 years, but a lot of good history is forgotten with some of these teams. Even going to Colorado, when you talk about Colorado in 1990, shared the national championship. You had a Heisman Trophy winner, Rashawn Salam. You had Michael Westbrook, Cordell Stewart. Colorado put players out, and we ain't even
Yeah.
got to talk about Nebraska. We got to talk about
Oh
Nebraska.
man.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh man.
We never played them, but just looking at their film, they was getting busy. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
And
it's
they didn't have a big playbook either.
oh no.
They didn't. It wasn't 4 or 5 wides. It
Look,
was, they had about 10, 11 plays, but you had to
you get
stop it.
when you getting busy and you only got 15 to 20 pass attempts a game just to keep people honest, like you really don't even have to pass for real.
Yeah.
That's work right there. That's real work.
Pace, man. We're gonna move on, man. Another dope show. We're gonna come back, talk about some of these matchups, these big matchups coming up in week 2. I know some people gonna say it's marketed as week 1, but nah, this is week 2 college football.
Man, you know how stupid it sounds to say week 0? What are we
Hey,
saying?
but it works for marketing. It's all about marketing, man. And then
Zero's
you
nothing.
know,
What are we did playing the game talking about week 0 is nothing. Week 0 is last week of training camp. What are you talking about, man?
and speaking of training camp, man, NFL training camp is over. They done broke that, so we got to jump into looking at week 1 of the NFL season. So we're gonna have a lot to talk about. So hey, another great show. Again, don't forget to tune in, hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications on so you can find out each time we drop an episode. Don't forget to click like on the shorts. And again, tune in for another episode of Shark Jockey Weekly.